have a seat at the table. So, for me, it's true that in fulfilling the duties of the presidency with great dignity, Mr. Obama represents the highest expression of the goal of assimilation. But for African Americans, he was also the ultimate lesson in how this antidote alone is insufficient to heal the gaping wounds of racial injustice in America. It's clear that black leadership in itself isn't enough to transform the country, so we must confront the end of an era and the dawn of a new one. We now live in a post-assimilation America. We must take seriously that those 50-year-old rules for racial advancement are now, as I've said, obsolete. And so I take inspiration and I offer to you Dr. King's last book in 1967, where he warned 2 years after his greatest successes that the movement was already hobbled by delusion. He said, the majority of white Americans consider themselves sincerely committed to justice for the Negro. They believe that American society is essentially hospitable to fair play and to steady growth toward a middle-class utopia embodying racial harmony. Exactly the kind of vision that Harvard Black MBAs have been passing on in their expectations of success. But unfortunately, Dr. King said this is a fantasy of self-deception and a comfortable vanity. Dr. King never imagined the election of African Americans to office in itself as sufficient. Instead, his truth was the need to remake all of American society. He urged us to become creative dissenters and hold the country to a higher destiny. In other words, he wanted us to stop becoming firsts and assimilating into a sick society, from what he called, and I quote directly, the dangerous cancer of hatred and racism. It is time for all of us to teach each other the truth about who and what have brought black people to the condition of deprivation against which he struggles today. In human relations, the truth is hard to come by, he continued, because most groups are deceived about themselves. Rationalization and the incessant search for scapegoats, starting to sound like the Trump era, are the psychological cataracts that blind us to our individual and collective sins. To find the origins of what was then called the Negro problem, we must turn to the white man's problem. He said every moment of progress was met with a simultaneous step backward. There has never been a solid, unified, and determined thrust to make justice a reality for African Americans. The white backlash of today, 50 years ago, is an expression of the same vacillations, the same search for rationalizations, the same lack of commitment that have always characterized white America on the question of race. If we had only listened to that Dr. King, of course, who was killed 50 years from next Wednesday.